Do you want to know how to make these decorative pods on the end of your fins? That's what I'm going to cover in this video. I had a question in our recent RockSim Live, which we do on Friday afternoons, and the customer asked, how do you put these on in RockSim? And then once we went through the process of putting them on in RockSim, then he wanted to know how you do them in real life. So I decided to make this video to show you. So I'm going to walk through the steps on how to create this decorative design. This is a scratch-built rocket, so it's not a kit, but it will show you how to do it in case you are building a kit. The first step is to cut out the balsa fins from a sheet of balsa wood. And you can see I've done several, and I've cut extras. And I've also cut out the little teardrop shape. Now, I've cut them out on my laser cutter, but these are simple to cut out with using a hobby knife and a piece of wood and a template. You want to lay the template down and then just cut around it, and that's pretty easy to do. And we have videos on how to do that. What I want is to build up some thickness, and when I tested them, I wanted them a little bit thicker than this. So actually, I'm going to stack up 4 of them per each fin. So I'm going to have 2 on each side, and then we'll carve them, and they'll be a lot thinner once we're done. For right now, that's how thick that's going to be. So my step here to begin is I'm just going to glue 2 together, and I'm just going to use super glue on this. But you can also use wood glue if you want. Just make sure that they line up pretty close. And I'll do the other set. Okay. Now, I'm not going to glue them to the balsa wood yet. Before I do that, I want to airfoil these fins. Now, this is a little bit tricky because we can't really airfoil this portion of the fin. We can only airfoil this. So if you have a marker or a pencil, just kind of like, you know, we're only going to airfoil this part, not that. So I'm going to use some 150 grit sandpaper and my sanding tee, and I'll start by airfoiling this fin. I'm going to start along the back edge. And notice how I'm holding my fingers. I'm trying to apply even pressure along this back edge. And then I'm also kind of following that line that I made. I want to keep this part as flat as possible so that when we glue it together, it'll be easier and there'll be less filling later. Then you'll flip it over and do the other side. And again, look how holding my fingers down there. Just apply even pressure along this back edge. And I want to look at this edge right here, make sure that I got that nice teardrop shape. So I'm pretty close along that edge. Now I have to work up a little bit here. It's razor sharp. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to switch to the front. And again, I've got a little bump right here. So I've got to kind of go around that to round this off. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to some fine grit sandpaper. So this is 320 grit. And I'm just going to just kind of smooth things out. Okay, so this part is ready for me to glue these on, but before I glue them on, I want to pre-shape them. My little trick is to cut a 5th piece. So I got a 5th teardrop shape, and I'm just going to tack these together. And I want to split them apart later. So I'm going to stack them together, sand them to the shape that I want, and then I'm going to peel them apart, lose the middle piece, and then they'll be pre-shaped where I can glue them onto my fin. To tack them together, I'm going to use some spray adhesive. I love spray adhesive because it's just like, we're just temporarily putting things together. This works. And you should do this outdoors because this stuff is nasty to breathe. I want to be able to see this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a marker and color that edge nice and dark. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to thin these down. I'm going to take like this outer edge, I'm going to make it about half the thickness that it currently is. That will save me a lot of time later. Okay, so you can see it's about halfway, a little bit thinner, but that's okay. All right, so now I got my two outer halves, and this is going to be my middle. All right, so now we're going to start rounding things off. And you got to hold these together pretty tight because it's only temporarily stuck together. Like it's already moving. So squeeze them good. And in fact, what I want to do is to come all the way on the outside edges, come down to a point. So you can see my black and see how nice and it's coming down to a point. That's kind of what I want it to do. I want to leave a little bit of thickness there just because I have to pry them apart. And if it's too thin, those tips are going to break off. So now I'll start rounding out the sides. You can see I'm kind of rotating as I'm going. Okay, so when I got most of it, I'm going to take it off of the sanding tee and just use my finger. This allows me to conform a little bit better. Switching to some finer grit sandpaper here. Now it's time to split them apart again. So I'm kind of twisting that. All right, so I got my two outer pieces. Okay, so now these are going to get glued onto the fin like this. Kind of watch that edge right there. It's really thin. All right, so now here on the back, now I want to go down to a little bit finer point. And since it's glued to the middle, it's a lot stronger. All right, that looks pretty good. I should have stiffened this back edge up with a little CA, but it's looking pretty good. All right, so now I want to inspect this edge right here. This one looks really good. But if you have a gap, what I would recommend taking some spot putty or some fill and finish and fill any gaps along that edge. And then you're going to come back with a needle file. This is what a needle file looks like. And this is a triangular one. And I want to get right into that edge and sand that down. And I've already applied it and it's already dried. And I got a little bit here at this side. And then on the outside, I can just use sandpaper. Okay, so I'm going to finish up the third fin, and then we'll stick them on a rocket, and we'll see how it looks. At this point, I've finished sanding all the fins. I've attached them to the rocket, and I can go ahead and start priming this rocket. And when you prime it, you're going to see a lot of the blemishes, and then you'll have to fill in a little bit more. But so far, I like it. The pods look excellent. They're not 100% uniform, but it's close enough from a distance that you can't tell. And so then once we get this all painted up, it's going to look great. So that is how you make these decorative pods on the tips of your fins.